All right, just confirm we're up and running. Yeah, we're live there. So,
Warning, if you are faint of heart or easily offended, this show is not for you.
I don't give a damn about what you saying, bitch, you in the way. Closed case, my nigga beat the charges like yesterday. In your face, I'ma go hard and make sure you see the cake. Keep the pace, ain't no one fucking with me, this not a race. Doing the shit that I want, I'm never gonna stop, I'm never gonna give in. Making my way to the top, I told you to ride, I told you to get in. Now you can't eat out my pot, it's filled to the top, and I'm about to dig in. You say I was doing you wrong.
welcome to the Go Rogue podcast. I'm Roger Stout, and joining us this evening is Dave Wilson, president of the ABKC. How you doing, Dave?
All right, how you doing today?
Good. Trying to get my comments up here. Got people rolling in. All right, looks like we're good. So Nationals coming up just a couple of days away, literally just a couple of days away. George R. Brown Convention Center in Houston, Texas, right?
Yes, sir. Same place we've had it the past couple of years.
December 2nd, which is just a few days away. I know we're kind of mad rush right now, getting everything packed up, getting the dogs loaded up, getting the van all ready, and trying to find a kennel hand to watch the kennels while we're gone. So it's a crazy time right now.
That's the hardest part of owning dogs now is finding somebody to take care of your dogs when you're gone.
Yeah, definitely for sure. Let me see. Yep, we got some people rolling in the comments here. So with Nationals, yeah, you said it's been there for the last few years, but like where was the first Nationals at?
You know, the first Nationals was in LA. The first two were in LA. No, I'm sorry, I take that back. Actually, the first Nationals was in Detroit.
Okay.
It was the actual, the very first Nationals in Detroit, Michigan, and then we moved to LA from Detroit, Michigan.
Okay.
And I took 2 years in LA, then we did like Atlanta, and then we went to Las Vegas, and then back to Atlanta, you know, that, and then we started branching out after that.
Okay. Yeah, it seemed like this settled on Texas. It's kind of the middle of the country. You know, it's probably easier to get equal drive for a lot of people.
Yeah, the thing is, like, we try to move it around the states, and, you know, we've done the East Coast, West Coast, we've been everywhere with it, but some places do better turnouts than other places. So you always got to be aware of, you know, that, because obviously you need to do it in a place where there's a lot of dogs that are show dogs. So you have a core base of dogs there. Other things you have to look for is, you know, international airports. You know, we have a big international following. So it's really important in Texas. Houston has two. You have Hobby, and then you have, I forget what the other one is over there, George Bush. You have two international airports right there, center of the states. We have a very good rapport with the venue, and we get to pick the hall that we want. You have Papados right in the hall. You know, we have a good rapport with the hotels right there. Everything is centralized. So there's a lot of misconceptions when people are like, oh, why didn't they do it here anymore? Or why aren't they doing it out here anymore? And the truth be told, all the drama or anything anybody puts around it is not true. The reason why we did Texas in the end was, in all honesty, Texas gave us the best turnout for not only local, but it was for people coming in internationally and all that. It just ended up being a venue that was really easy to work with, and they made us a deal for each year to come back. We could reserve the same date every year. So, you know, between the rapport, the turnout, and the fact that it's between two international airports, I mean, there's so many reasons why it's there. If you've been there before, you know, all the food and everything's right there, localized, all the hotels, you can walk, you know, everywhere. So it just became the hub. I mean, we've had places where, you know, we didn't get the turnout, or we had places where we had issues at the last moment with something coming up with the venue, or, you know, other things. So there's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes for an event of this caliber, and you can't take risk, man. You can't go somewhere there's a possibility it could be shut down at one moment, or they come in and they double the fee on you, and they bring in like a union place in Chicago. It was a great turnout. Chicago was a great city, but it was a union venue, and we didn't know that. and everything doubled at that point. The fees doubled. You went from a who knows, a $90,000 event to a $120,000 event. Without knowing that. So Houston became the home, and I mean it's an easy place for everybody to get to as far as Central America. Central of America.
For sure. And just in availability of, like, lots of times we'll go to shows and like the show is there, but there isn't jack shit else around that area, and Houston's completely the opposite. Like, in the time you're not at the show, there's an infinite amount of things you can do in Houston.
Exactly.
So,
and the venue too, you could walk around the venue, inside the venue. Not only do we have food in the venue, but inside the conference center, there's 2 restaurants, there's a Starbucks, there's a bunch of things right there. You go right outside, there's restaurants and bars right there. I mean, it's literally everything is centralized in that one location.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, people, we've had discussions before about, well, you think they'll ever move it? And I'm like, it just seems to be like such a good location. I think it'll be tough to justify, having to find another location that will treat you guys as well as that location does.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, we had, like I said, San Francisco wasn't a few years back, but it didn't have the turnout. Atlanta, we ran into some issues where they wanted some weird permits at the end and almost shut the event down. Chicago, I already explained the union thing. Yeah. Kentucky, we had an issue where they told us we had access to the outdoors, and the only way you could do that is get through a parking garage. And then another one we had ended up being on a second level where the dogs couldn't get it. Just too many things. It's just too many things. In Houston, it's easy, man. It's ground floor right there. You can walk in, walk right out. So that's why it's there, and that's why we choose to stay there. I mean, it's a perfect venue, just like Westminster. So if you're like AKC, they have their big Westminster show, and it's one centralized location every year. It's where the name comes from, or you got UKC, their nationals every year is in Kalamazoo. It's at their home base, So, most places choose a venue for their big events that you can return to year after year. And a lot of it has to do with the familiarity with, vendors and everything else. So that's why we're in Houston. So I think we'll probably just stay in Houston from here on out.
Hey, not unreasonable, I don't think. Now, for some reason, even though this isn't new news, it seemed to got cranked up recently, and it's all about this new version of whatever dog virus it is. And I know a bunch of people were making a bunch of noise, and I figured we'd kind of talk about that because we had some people that were kind of shying away about coming to the show, and some people were just like, yeah, this happens every year. It's not like it's new.
Yeah, I mean, we had it blew up just the past couple of days, and then you had an influx of people scared and backing out, but that's already died off again. You have your initial group that does it. The thing about it is that particular virus, I mean, it's been around since 2022, really. And if you read all the reports on it, that's when they first started testing and noticing it. And it was more isolated in certain areas. It wasn't too big of a deal. And then in August of this year is when they brought a little more attention to it. And what happened recently is during the Thanksgiving holiday, there was a thing that went out. It's just telling people, hey, there's a virus out there. If you're going to visit family, it's like a kind of a warning to people about taking your dogs places and traveling. So that kind of stirred up, I think, the last minute hype for it. I mean, don't get me wrong. It is a virus. I mean, it is a virus. It is a virus that is a respiratory virus. And anytime you have dogs that are at risk, old dogs with compromised immune system, young puppies, things like that, they're more susceptible to those viruses and tend to be affected in worse ways by those type of viruses. So, in those type of settings, I wouldn't ever expose any dog that's old, compromised immune system, or young puppies to any atmosphere where there could be a virus. The other thing people do that, a lot of people don't realize is that these things happen all the time. Dog shows, vets, dog parks, that's where things get spread. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've had dogs with kennel cough or, things like that. I mean, you have to do your due diligence as a dog owner. When you're going somewhere in an atmosphere where there's a lot of dogs, you, number one, should try to keep your dog away from other dogs. You should try to keep people from petting your dog at that type of a situation. You should always be sterilizing. Number one, you should never bring a dog there that has any type of a symptom. If your dog is sneezing, coughing, anything, leave your dog at home. anything, loose stool, all kinds of things. You have to be aware of that, but you have to do your due diligence, and when you come back from an event like that, you should sanitize yourself, remove your clothes, don't go around your dogs until everything's been sanitized that came from the show, your crates, everything else. So it's a typical thing that most experienced dog breeders and show goers know. It's one of those things, you're always taking a risk for contracting something when you're in an environment where there's plenty of dogs. It's like sending your kids to school. When your kids go to school, they're going to be subjected to all of those things. It's just part of what happens in those environments, and you prepare yourself for them. Your dog should be up to date on all their shots, especially their distemper, their influenza, those type of things. You should do in the Bordetella, for kennel cough. My mind went blank from under there. But yeah, you should have all of these things. I, as a breeder and dog owner, I always update my vaccines. I don't go to the vets anymore because they normally will still give you like a 7-way. Where online now you can order 10 ways, that has updated viruses. So, updated vaccines. And so I always recommend to people that, buy your vaccines online. Go to a reputable company that sells them and look for the ones that are carrying the most up-to-date versions instead of just going to the vet. And a vet too. The vet is also one of those places. I always told people, if you're looking for things like parvo and things like that, and be careful, the vets are where you're going to get those things, because that's where people bring sick dogs.
Yeah, so, sick dogs. Yeah.
Yeah. That's an airborne. So it's it's one of the things that happen. Nobody wants to contract anything, get their dog sick in any way. We all hope that everybody that attends doesn't bring sick dogs. We all hope that everybody that attends is up to date on all their vaccines. But it's inevitable that things happen like that. It's just the way it goes. It's part of going to events where there's plenty, a lot of dogs.
Exactly. Now, ABKC did release some, what we call it, guidance, or just some, you guys are actually making some changes at the show. So I know, like, one I read was like, it's your handler's responsibility to show the judge the bite. The judge is not going in every dog's mouth, just as a precautionary measure. Yeah. And then what are what was some of the other things? There's no 3 to 6 puppy class.
Well, so we don't have a 3 to 6 puppy class because we don't want young dogs there, period. Right. We say that when the dogs are not in the ring, or they're not going to the out potty area or wherever, they should be in their crates. That minimalizes dogs passing other dogs. The dogs should either go from the crate to the ring, the crate outside, the crate to the stage, if that's what you're doing. So we're reinforcing that. We bought tons of sanitizer, so we'll be giving out free sanitizer. We're going to have the judges always have sanitizer available, but they're going to be more diligent on constantly, putting it on and, doing it on their hands. Again, like you mentioned, we're not having the judges opening the dog's mouth at this event. We're going to have the exhibitor do that for the judge. And again, all exhibitors and all handlers, they should be aware that when you're switching from dog to dog, definitely sanitize. So we're going to be more diligent in trying to space people and dogs away from each other. As much as we can possibly do. It is, again, it's one of the things when you go to dog shows, you're going to be around other dogs. So yeah, it's normal. But yeah,
and these 3 first points are actually nothing new. Like, this is the norm for the show. Like, keep your dog in a kennel. There shouldn't be any dogs out walking around. Require all dogs to be crated at all times. These are normal things, which are normal precautionary measures for any time of year, really. It's just the 2 additionals that you had added is the judge won't be looking at a dog's mouth, and that there'll be additional sanitizer available. So
basically, yeah, they'll be looking at the dog's mouth. They just won't be manually opening it themselves. Yeah.
And then down below, obviously, some owner responsibilities, which you should be doing. You should be getting, if your dogs are not vaccinated and fully taken care of and fully vet checked, they shouldn't be coming to a show anyway. So a lot of common sense there. And I think that's, I ran across a Facebook group, and it was supposed to be like some kind of disease tracker thing, and I go in there, and it's just a bunch of local news stories, which you can't put we learned from COVID that you can't really put a lot of weight on local news. And then like personal accounts, like ladies in there, oh, my dog's had it for a year. And I'm like, what? No, your dog doesn't have it for a year. Like, that's not how it works. But, and just some BS stories where people are like, well, my dog passed away And I'm pretty sure it was this. Like, come on, guys. Like, let's be
it sounds a little reminiscent of COVID, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of,
Yeah.
and we as people have just went through that, you know. So when this comes out, I think there's a lot of red flags that immediately go off and say, this isn't anything we knew. We've seen it. You know, some of us had it last year. Some of our dogs got it last year, you know, and like, I keep all my dogs vaccinated. They get their Bordetella, they get influenza, they get all their shots on a regular basis. It's just part of even doing business as a breeder. You'll have people come to your yard for their female to be bred. Like, it just happens, you know? So it's one of those things where you've got to be precautious no matter where you go, regardless of what time of year it is.
Yeah.
So I thought it was worth mentioning just because it was like an extra amount of stink that just happened right at Thanksgiving time, which may have been accidental. They were just trying to warn people about, you know, leaving your dogs while you're out of town. And it just fired things up a little bit more than it needed to be, really. So
yeah, that was more like a thing they were saying, like if you're kenneling your dog during Thanksgiving, you know, look out for this type of thing, you know, and that's what really pushed it. So
yeah,
and then everybody jumped. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, it is a virus, and it is, you know, I see people saying a lot of crazy things, and if you really read behind it, it seems pretty standard for an upper respiratory virus. But you know, I'm not a bit.
I think the only thing is like it's so like it's mutated a little bit because, and it does that. That's how viruses survive. They continue to mutate.
Yeah.
So this one's not getting picked up on regular tests, and I think that's what fired everybody off.
Yeah.
But it has the exact same symptoms as influenza. You know, they're snotty noses, runny eyes, and so let's create kennel sanitizer. Okay, I just wanted to see what they were. So the other thing about the show that's a little bit different this year is with Tone kind of organizing the stack off for the more extreme style dogs, where typically there was a stage there, but it really wasn't. People were kind of stacking off in the aisles or whatever, you know, and this year it's a little more organized. And there's a little bit of hype behind that. You know, a lot of guys are coming to bring their dogs, and I think that's an encouraging thing. But of course, there's always somebody that has a little resistance about having that style dog at Nationals.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. Nationals is about the ring, and the titles are about the ring. I mean, that's why people come. They come to win that Nationals title. It is one of the most prestigious titles that we have for the ABKC. So, I mean, that's a big deal. And this is a big show for that. We always had the stack stage there for people to stack their dogs up like we always have and, you know, be at Nationals. We're not trying to turn away any ABKC registered dogs or anything like that. We did before have I think Spielberg did one year at Nationals. We've had a few Nationals where we actually had some type of a stack off going that was organized. It was the past couple of years that we got away from that and kind of, you know, pushed that a little bit further, you know, out there. But so many people came and they want to be at Nationals with the dogs and do that. So this year, Tone stepped up and said, "Yeah, I'd like to organize it. That way it's not just some random thing, and you know, make it to where it really actually means something to the people who are involved and people get a chance to see that particular type of a dog." So, you know, we said, if that's what you want to do and that's what our clientele is interested in having that available at Nationals, then by all means, we'll have that available at Nationals as well. So, you know, it's not to take away anything from the ring whatsoever. It's just so that there's something else available for people to look at while they're there. You know, I'm a big fan of going to events where there's other things going on, so that when you have, the thing is, a lot of people that come in from the outside are new to this. So they're coming in to learn about our breed, and they're coming in to learn, you know, what this is all about. And, you know, so they're not going to stand ringside the entire time. You know, us avid people who are diehard, like we want to see who's winning and who's the top dog, we're going to stand there. But, you know, other people, you know, they're going to come and view and see different things. So it's always good to have vendors and food and other things going on, positive things where people can just see the different elements of the atmosphere and the culture of what we are, you know. So, you know, that this year, that's, again, Tone's, you know, organize it, and there's some really top dogs coming out there, and it'll give people a good chance to see that, you know.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, we can get more into that if you like in any way, because I'm also, besides being the ABKC president, I'm a breeder, always been a breeder, so I understand the importance of all elements of our breed, all aspects of our breed.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that, like, I don't know. It's like you get dogs on opposite ends of the spectrum. So, like, in the middle, here's the ideal American Bully, right? And then you have the more extreme dog, to the right, and maybe the more classic dog to the left, right? And both of those dogs, even though they're out of the spectrum, they're still actually very important tools to our breed. And I think a lot of time, especially more extreme dogs get a lot of flack, and they get, attacked and basically said that they don't need to exist and all this other stuff. But in reality, if you look at some of the most popular studs in our breed that are working toward creating the next generation of American Bullies, they are those more extreme dogs.
Well, here's the thing. We're asking for a breed that's pushing a lot of boundaries. We're looking for a breed that has extreme traits, it's carrying excessive bone and muscle and all of these things, but we still want a breed that's functionable and that can move according to its standard, and that is correct in every aspect according to its standard and its build. And in order to build a breed like that, you have to have both elements on both sides. You have to. I mean, maybe 50 years down the road, 75 years down the road, when the breed is more established and those elements have been tweaked, the need for that on both sides might not be as important anymore. But in the developmental phase, in the phase that we still are in, the 17-year period now, I guess we're in, or 14 or 7, somewhere in there, you need both things. You need the dogs with, I don't say, I've been saying for a while that the breed should have extreme traits. It just still should be correct to its standard. And extreme traits are written into the standard. If you read the standard, it explains all of this and it states all of this. So it's not very unclear in the verbiage. But anyway, you're going to need dogs that I call overdone dogs. You have to have, every breeder is going to need at some point to breed into something that's overdone, the traits are more excessive than what the standard is calling for, because that's the only way you're going to enhance and get to that level if you're lacking that particular trait. On the flip side, you got to have dogs that are going to be a little lighter. They're going to be a little more structurally sound in different ways so that you can clean up some of these things as well. So you need both elements. And every real breeder understands that you need both elements. Some need one side more than the other, and some need the other more than, there. And some people are right in the middle and just need a little bit of a tweak, one way or the other. But that's part of what this breed is. I've been breeding this breed for, forever. I went from, breeding pretty much extreme pit bulls to then the American Bully, right. And I've always bred that way. I always I like to overcompensate. When I'm looking to bring something in, I overcompensate. And a lot of the overcompensation comes from what I would call an overdone dog, And when I'm saying overdone, that's doesn't mean bulldoggy or exotic-y or that. It's just a dog that's excessive on some of the traits of mass, muscle, things like that we're looking for. So you need that, There's a misconception out here that, that we did away with the extreme. I've explained it a million times. We didn't do away with the extreme. We rolled that into the pocket standard in XL, and that's where we're trying to get to, where they understand they're supposed to have extreme traits, but still be correct to the standard. And that's why the standard is clear and written that way. So I use more the term overdone. And then everybody, the purpose of the classics, I've had some say, well, why is there a class for the classics and not for the overdone dogs? And the answer to that is really the classic dogs can be a show dog. They are correct to their standard and they can be a show dog, whereas the overdone dogs aren't show dogs because the traits they have are excessive and they're not correct in many ways. So they're not really a show dog. So that's the difference. The show isn't for every dog, and it's not for every variety. It's not for every thing. I mean, the majority of all breeds aren't show dogs, period.
Right. So, exactly. Yeah, but not only that, but the classic existed as the American Bully up until the point where, breeders were able to push it to another level,
Correct.
So the more extreme dog was just a result of pushing beyond what the ring called for necessarily and just creating something more extreme. So it makes sense.
They were there, though. They've always been there. If you really watch the true history of the breed, they were there from the beginning. It's just This breed went through a lot of things over many years. So if you go back to the history, though, you could probably almost say the Gotti dogs are more that way and the Edge dogs are more the other way,
Right.
In some
And
elements.
that's, when I was just getting into bullies, I did a lot of homework. I watched a lot of YouTube videos and interviews with you and a bunch of other people, and I think when the standard was adjusted a long time ago to eliminate the extreme class, that was one of those where you were like, well, the dogs were starting to lose type. Like we were really pushing to get the dogs very correct, but they were starting to lose type. So we needed to eliminate the extreme class and put that in the standard and say, no, the dog should be extreme in nature. And then for a while now, that's what the judges are looking for. Obviously, they're looking for a dog that moves correctly to the American Bully standard, but they're also looking for a dog that displays superiority, as far as mass and bone is concerned. So, I think it was about what was it? Kimber was about a year old, my first American Bully, when we were just getting started. And, we put our girl in the show ring for the first time in Louisiana. It was in the middle of COVID. We're all wearing masks, and it's like a half building, half wide open. So we're all freezing to death. And to us, we thought she was a standard female, and then we put her in the standard class, and the judge was like, nope, she's got to go to the classic class, and it was like that day, a bunch of people were like, we don't know what they're talking about. That she looks like a standard to me, but it really changed our path. It put us on a different, path. And we said, oh, okay. So they want more than this. I get it. So we started working toward that. But obviously a lot of people had been breeding for a long time and believed that what they had in the ring up to that point was a standard. And then, they got moved to a different class. And obviously that created a lot of stink.
Well, that's kind of also why I put those sketches and the drawings out so people could get a better idea of the physical type that we were referring to. I mean, it's written in the standard. It's just the interpretation wasn't always accurate. But all that happened, I think, in 2018 or 16. I don't remember which of those. 18, I believe, is when all that happened. But yeah, I mean, and then the thing about it is one of the most important things for any breed is when you look at a dog, you should be able to clearly identify that breed for what it is and not confuse it with another breed. And the same thing goes to variety. So when you look at a dog, the first thing you see are the elements of breed type and things like that, unique traits that make that breed stand out as its own breed and uniquely different from other breeds. And that's kind of what we've been trying to say is that first thing you should be able to do when you look at an American Bully is no, this is an American Bully. I'm not looking at a pit bull. I'm not looking at a bulldog. I'm not looking at any of these things. I'm looking at an American Bully. And that's why it's very important that everybody understands what the actual look of the breed is supposed to be. I know everybody uses the term breed type. 90% of the people are meaning mass and muscle, and then the other 10% are actually understanding and saying, well, breed type is all these other elements. So basically, in generic terms, is the look, The dog should have the look of what an American Bully should be.
Yeah, exactly. And as people breed to, and you'll see, people that have show dogs will breed to a little bit more extreme dog. They use one of my dogs on a regular basis to add more mass to their females, and then they bring a new generation of a dog. It's a little bit bigger to the ring, and they just keep pushing that. So they're really, I think that's the other thing that we need to kind of clarify to me, like, does ABKC doesn't really put a cap on it, right? There's no like bone measurement requirements. There's no reason a dog can't have a 27-inch head in the ring, right? As long as it's proportional and the dog moves correctly. I mean, at some point is ABKC going to be like, all right, this is big enough. Like we've gone too far.
Well, the thing is, if you get into the standard, everything is based on balance. Right. So when you're talking about proportions and being proportionate, it's all based on balance of the dog. When a dog has portions that are outside of what the dog can physically hold, becomes unbalanced, the dog actually won't be able to support those actual traits. In all honesty, what'll happen. That's why you see overdone dogs. That's why you see dogs where the pasterns are weak, or all these things start to have the dog start to fall apart, because once you get outside of balance, then a dog physically is not going to be able to support those particular traits that are outside of a balanced dog. So it's not something that we have to put a cap on. It's something that's already there. I mean, the dogs that go beyond, it's obvious when they go beyond because they're no longer correct anymore, and you can tell. Yeah. And that's when they start to fall apart. I mean, I hate to say it that way, but that's, as a breeder, that's a term we use, is saying, hey, the dog's overdone and it's starting to fall apart because the dog can't support its traits,
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but as every time, we see a new dog every once in a while. I mean, last year it was Zero, and, it was Blue before that. And it's just every year there's like a bigger dog that they're able to keep it together. And I think, as breeders continue to push it, then, it I can see what you're saying. It's kind of naturally balances itself out, right? Like they can only push so hard before it all falls apart. So they got to back up and say, okay, we went, this is too far. We got to back up a little bit.
Right.
And it really doesn't mean that the dog can't be useful, but it can be useful as a breeding tool. It just doesn't make the cut as a show dog.
Right. And if you look at the standard and you look at the proportions, they're there, and it explains everything, how high, tall a dog should be and long, and where it should be square, and all of these things. And once you push those proportions beyond those, all of those things don't exist anymore. So it's already written there. It's in the standard. Right. But yeah, I mean, that's exactly how you said it, is exactly what I'm saying. So yeah.
Yeah. I think it's always been in the interpretation. You know what I mean? I see people that post, and they'll take a picture, and they'll even take the illustration of the American Bully, and they'll put it beside their dog, and they'll say, look, it's almost exactly the same. And I'll look at it. I'll be like, no, not really. I mean, it's not quite there, but in their vision, they see it. They see that it is, and the opposite is true. People will take dogs that are just too much, and compare it to that sketch and say, see, my dog's perfect. And even though that dog's probably a little overdone. So
I think in the standard, we've been pretty consistent, because if you really go back to where it was like, I think it was Bear, then Samson, then Blue, then Zero. Those were all the Nationals winners, and they were all standards. And all four of those dogs, to me, are in the same category as far as size and everything. Like, they're, each one has its own thing, but overall, I mean, I think that's a pretty damn consistent run of what a standard American Bully, should be. Right. And I don't think it's really changed. I think it has balanced itself out. It's just not everybody has dogs of that particular type or caliber, right. But they're there. And when they're there, you win the top tiers,
Yeah, exactly.
Like Mufasa was top. He didn't win Nationals, but he won a top 10, and he was that same type of a dog. And then you get into the pockets, you have the bus, and you've got, a lot of these dogs that have won the top tiers are what we're describing. They're there.
Yeah, there's just not as many of them. But again, we're a very young breed. I mean, we're 15, 17 years in. It's not, I don't think that's an unacceptable thing at this point to say, there's only 4 or 5 dogs that really hit that higher level. I mean, that's for a very young breed. A lot of people seem to forget, especially when they're breeding and they look at like COIs and they look at all this other data, and they say, well, the American Bully numbers are just crazy. And, our what's available to breed to, our breed stock is pretty small. We don't have 100 years behind us like a lot of breeds do. So I think people tend to be a little overcritical. We're like, hey, we're 17 years in. We're not cookie cutter, obviously, yet, but what we're doing right now is building a dog that looks like the American Bully. We've got time to tweak everything and make everything perfect and make the dog move the way it's supposed to. But the reality of it is, if it doesn't look like the American Bully, then we've already failed to breed. We have to make sure that is the case.
Yes, sir. Yeah. And, we get a lot of flack back sometimes because people, 15 years ago, it looked like this or this. But yeah, of course, that was the development phase, and we've been developing until we're finally there. And we're there as far as the way it needs to be written. It's there. It's just, we just need to start seeing more and more dogs now of that caliber. And it'll happen. I mean, it's a process, And I argue with some breeders a lot too. They think, oh, we're already there, or we have the gene pool, or let's get rid of the classic right now. And, we need to do this. And a lot of people aren't realizing, like, man, dog breeds take hundreds of years to build a gene pool, to finish a breed. 14 or 15 or 17, whatever we are, we're not even 20 years into this. It's nothing. So we still have to build our gene pool. If we were to close the stud books today and cut out, let's say, the classics and cut out this and cut out that, this breed within 10, 15 years would fall apart because there wasn't enough in the gene pool. I mean, it's just the way it is. It's not even a debatable thing. It's just you have to look at the numbers and look at how breeds are made, and you need a lot of dogs to sustain a breed on all ends of it, So we're just still there. We're still growing.
Still getting there.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of, I think we have some people with a vision that think this is the finished dog and we shouldn't be messing with it anymore. And there's people that wake up every day and say, what am I going to do now? How am I going to push it to that next level? Yeah. So I think that's where the community can get a little bit divided, but I think that all works itself out.
We're not messing with it anymore. When we wrote that standard, that was the final standard. And that was, years ago. It just took a while to get people to really start to understand what all that meant. But we're not messing with it anymore. It's just we're getting there, and that's what it is. And another thing we did for many years, push dogs out of the classes. If you look like a classic, you need to move over there. That's something new that our judges aren't doing now. We've decided now that we've been doing this for long enough, and we're not going to be moving the dogs anymore unless they're, height reasons will move them, obviously.
Right.
But they're going to stop doing that now because it's a point if you feel your dog is a standard and you put in a standard and, the judges don't feel it's that way, that's on you. It's the breeder, so right. We're not going to be moving them anymore to classic or any of that. I mean, we've done it long enough to where everybody should understand it, and now we're going to move forward.
Yeah. And I've had conversations with people about that and said, I think right now our classic class is probably the most consistent class, right? Because a lot of dogs got moved into that class and they all look a lot alike. So you've seen a lot of consistency there. So, but as far as classes are concerned, the original class was the standard, right? And then you created some classes beyond that. And then at one point eliminated some classes. Like you said, you eliminated the extreme. And there was some question about putting a cap on XL heights. Like there used to be dogs that were a little bit taller, and
there is a cap as far as the standard is written. There's a cap both ways, on the low end of pocket, on the high end of XL. The judges weren't dismissing the dogs that were over the cap, especially in the XL, because the XL is one of the varieties that is furthest from completion. I mean, that's being quite honest. When you go to the shows and you look, it's of all the categories, it's the one that still has the longest way to go, in my opinion, before it's at its final look of what the American Bully breed XL should be. And it needs the most work. So a lot of judges weren't being so critical on the high end if the dogs were representing more of what it was supposed to look like. Now we're telling them, look, you got to be critical. You got to, if it's 3 inches or more, you don't even pay any attention on that. You have to let them know, an inch or two here or there, we're still in the building process and the dog is exceptional, then, okay, but the cap is there. It's how we're doing it in the ring. And now we're at a phase where we're telling judges, okay, you have to pay attention. If it's more than a couple inches, then that's outside of what you can, award,
Right.
And at the whole purpose of that, in all honesty, is because if you look at the XL, a lot of the dogs that fit more of what we're looking for are the taller dogs, and those dogs need to be in the breeding program in order for the other dogs to get to where they need to be. A lot of shows I go to, a lot of breeders ask me advice on the XL, and a lot of them I tell them you really need to dip back into a heavy bone standard dog, to get that framework on your dog before you worry about the height. You got to get the frame on there first. A lot of them are lacking frame, not all, but anyway, but there is a cap. It's just when that's regulated, when that becomes a DQ, and we've already now to the phase where we've been telling the judges, like more than an inch or two, that it's gone too far.
Right. And that kind of applies on the shorter end of things as far as the pockets are concerned. You can be too short as a pocket. I think what's the minimum for a male?
I think 14. I don't even 14, have it on.
I think it was 14.
14. Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So, those are all reasons for that. At one point or another, there was a reason that those were put into place. But as far as that's concerned, these are the classes of ABKC. Nothing's going to change as far as that's concerned. You don't anticipate any other classes being added?
No, I don't anticipate classes being added. I mean, way down the road when you separate the varieties of one day, you want to separate them as breeds. And when you do that, then you're going to have to add some more distance between the three varieties as far as the height regimen. So you would go down in pocket and you would go up. But that's way down the road when you look at like the Schnauzer. You know, the Schnauzer at one point in time was a standard, and then another point in time split into varieties, and then another point in time split into separate breeds, the miniature, the standard, and the giant Schnauzer, which are now three separate breeds. But we're talking something hundreds and hundreds of years before it went through all of those separations and changes. We're way too early in the American Bully breed to even start thinking about that. I mean, right now, the genes are too close. You know, you can still breed standards and get pockets or XLs and things like that, you know, so we're still ways away from that. The concept of that is there for the future, but it's not something in the near future. It's way too young of a breed.
I think that is the consistency thing is, you know, when you breed a pocket to a pocket and they all come out pockets for generation after generation after generation, but still to this day, those taller dogs are still in our genes. They still pop out. If you're a pocket breeder, you're still getting dogs that are a little bit taller every once in a while.
Well, that's why you can't separate them as breeds, right? Now I know some other registries and people are like, hey, we should make these separate breeds, but it doesn't work because it's still the same gene right now, and the breed's way too young to separate them as breeds. The first step that we will do as ABKC is identify the dogs. Once they hit a year old, we'll identify the dogs, and then at that point they'll have the identification of its variety. And once that's the next stage is the identification of a variety on the paperwork. But again, we're still a little bit early for that too. You know, it's one of these things that breeders need to breed more pocket to pocket for periods of time and XL. You know, I mean, we're getting there, but it's not quite to where we're at that level yet. But ABKC's next stage will be to identify the varieties on their pedigrees versus separating them as breeds. That's way down the road. And I'm sorry to anybody you shouldn't be doing that.
Actually, a question I had asked a while back. I was curious about is like when we get your paperwork, it just says champion. It doesn't say champion of what, you know what I mean? And I've seen people in the past use that kind of as ammunition to say, hey, my dog's a standard champion, when in reality we're looking at him and saying, I don't know, you know, it's kind of on the border, you know, but when it champs out in a specific class, you know, then it ends up being that. So I think sometimes the clarification on the paperwork would be nice. So we give a place for a breeder to ask that stud owner per se, hey, what class did this dog champ out in?
Right. And we will get there. That is something that's actually in the near future. That's the next stage. I mean, it's a big thing to take on because you have to have verification. You know, so if a dog is a pocket, it needs to be verified that it's a pocket after a year old. If it's an XL, it needs to be verified. You know, if it's a classic or it's a standard, it needs to be verified. So we're talking the process of somebody being able to verify all of these things prior to putting it on the paperwork. So that's a difficult process in itself, you know. And, you know, it might sound easy to somebody, oh, you know, go to a dog show and have a judge, you know, evaluate your dog or measure your dog. Yeah, but the 90% of the American Bully breed isn't even at the dog shows. You know, that's just, you know, 10% of our breed, if that, actually attends dog shows. So it's a process that we feel like we're going to have a solution for. But again, that's something in the very near future where we'll put the identification of varieties on the paperwork, but it's not something that's happening this year, you know.
Yeah, I mean, definitely something for the future. Let me see if we have any. Get into some questions here.
And I wanted, if you don't mind, I wanted to clarify something because
sure,
I said on your last, you know, thing, and I don't ever get into anything of the other registries. Their business is their business, but I do want to clarify that the ABKC we created. Somebody said that the pocket class was the reason why they're doing micro and all these things because the ABKC. I don't know how it was worded, but it was worded as in Marco Suarez's dogs didn't fit that. And, you know, we didn't have a place for that. And to be quite honest, in the very beginning, when we created the varieties, the pocket class was actually created for breeders just like Marco Suarez. He was probably the main breeder of the original pockets in the American Bully. And that class and those stats were based on his dogs and other breeders that were breeding dogs like that at the time. So that was a little bit of false information about ABKC because, you know, I mean, we're not micro, we're not doing any of these things, but our pocket class was created for that particular variety for breeders just like Marco. I mean, he was the main breeder during that time. Right. I think a lot of people don't know the history, and the history, truth be told, of the breed is the Gotti dogs were more of the extreme style dogs way back when. The XLs were a line out in California called Butthead, and there's a few other lines out there that were in the XL side. Razor's Edge was more standard, and then Razor's Edge, tweaked into the pocket through breeders like Marco, and that's kind of how the original varieties were created, based on those breeders and bloodlines, that existed in our community.
So what about what year or how long ago would you say, like, because you started out with a standard class, so how long was it before like the pocket class became a thing, or was the pocket class always a thing as far as ABKC is concerned?
The pocket class and all that, I think, was like 2 years in. I think we were only 2 years in when we decided to add the varieties. Okay. We weren't really far into it. Yeah. I don't know the exact year, but it would have been maybe 2006, somewhere around there.
Nice. Cool. Let me see. Then we had a ton of questions. I'm going to roll back here and see if there's anything. I think someone threw the info. Let me see. I saw it, but then it rolled past. But someone said female minimum is 13, male minimum is 14.
Correct. We were right.
Right, yeah.
We were on point. We had it.
Yep. Let me see. One class, as long as it stays within. I mean, that's how it works. I don't know if you can see the comments there, but we're just kind of mid-2000. All right.
I can't see the comments for some reason on mine.
Yeah. Okay.
It's probably good though, because I can't read and talk at the same time anyway. So.
It can be tough. Yeah, I sit here like real quiet. Okay. Lots of just they were talking about vaccinations, getting a 10-way from Tractor Supply. Here's a good question. So Smooth Moreland wanted to know, where does Marco's yard fit now? So I'm assuming would be still pocket class, or
I have not stayed up on what he breeds to this day. I mean, I couldn't answer that question because I don't actually know what his dogs are this day. I haven't seen his dogs in many years.
And it's funny because you mentioned that, because there were a few yards that I followed when I first started, and they really evolved the type of dog they breed. They went from a more pocket standard dog to smaller, more micros. I've seen programs completely leave the standard and go toward like exotics and stuff, and then people that used to breed exotics come to bullies. So yeah, those programs can change over the years. For sure.
Yeah, I haven't stayed up to date on what he had. I mean, no, not saying anything bad or anything like that. Yeah. I just flat out don't know. I haven't seen him so in many years.
So Bully Broadcast wanted to know who had part in writing the standard. So I know it was you and
the original standard was just me and Lou Manipon. The original. And there's a lot of history of ABKC people don't know. It went through a lot of changes in hands over the years. I was always an owner, but I never wanted to run the ABKC. So we passed it around a few times to other people to run it, and it never worked out properly. And then in the end, we ended up bringing it back to Virginia. But the original was done then. And then the revision, the one and only revision, was me, Rolando Mata, and oh goodness. Fernando, I forget his last name, but it was the three of us that did the revision.
Okay. Yeah, and then like you had just said earlier, it really wasn't that much change going on. It was just combining two classes, and
it was combining those. It was basically combining some of the elements of the extreme standard, and then tweaking some of the other things, making more flaws. Making more DQs. So it's basically making it stricter in many ways is what we did. And we added more flaws, we added severe flaws, and then we added more DQs. So it was just, everything else was based on making the standard stricter.
Okay. Some people keep saying 2009. Cooper was in there, said 2009. I don't know. It must have been a previous question.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe that's when the pocket got added in.
I don't know. I'm not sure the date, but I don't think it was 2009. But
it's too hard to keep all the shit in your head for sure.
Cooper's a couple years younger than me, so maybe his brain is better than mine.
Exactly. He shouldn't be in here. He's probably driving. He likes to comment while he's driving.
He's probably printing right now for Nationals. Yeah. Cooper's probably still printing because he's been printing like crazy. So
yeah, he might be because he'll probably leave about the same time I do because he's kind of straight over from me.
He's a night driver. He likes to head out at nighttime. So.
Yeah, I mean, not much traffic at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were going to get Tone on here eventually and talk to him. We'll talk a little bit about his show. But, yeah, he's got a stack off down there every year, too. The kind of the same thing. I think that's kind of – we did that stack off at Jacksonville. And, yeah, so we were happy to see that, the Nationals is doing one. And that it's not really part of the show necessarily. We'll clarify that for sure. But it's something for those more extreme dogs to get some attention to.
And you'll have fun when Tone's on. Tone's a lot of energy, so he's good
for sure.
Yeah.
He said Bert is driving.
All right.
So he's going to print shirts in the back of the van on the way down.
I don't think that's ever going to happen. Those printers are way too big to put in the vehicle.
Exactly. Let me see. Okay, so that's a pretty good question, but I think he kind of misinterpreted it. He said 10% of the breed is at shows. He wished more would come out. If you have business with these dogs, you should be at shows. I think what he meant by that, and I'll let you clarify, but I think what you meant by that was 10% was actually like show quality dogs, right? Like
it's not even just that. It's if you look at any. See, there's another side of registration, the behind the scenes of all registrations, and the majority of all breeds are pets. The majority of all breeds are not necessarily dogs that are going into the show. I mean, you're a breeder and you sell dogs, and you really got to look at, how many of your clients are actually going to go to the dog show and how many of them are not, and it's more people who buy dogs aren't dog show people. More people that buy dogs aren't going and competing in shows, as well as the quality. Good breeders who want their dogs to be seen and be shown at the events, put them in the right hands. But when you're doing that, you're looking at, if you have a whole litter, how many of them are truly top show quality dogs? So it's an element of both things, the amount of dogs that are actually show quality, as well as the amount of people who own dogs that are into going to shows. So it's there's a lot more dogs produced than dogs that are being put into the ring. And that's the case in any breed. It is what it is. Working breeds, the same thing. More of the working breeds are still pets versus going and competing in some type of working,
right,
competition. So,
and I think that's fair to say is like people need to realize that there are breeds that are 100 years old and the majority of their litters are still pets. They're not necessarily show quality dogs. It's not like at some point every litter we're shitting out is going to be a bunch of show dogs. It's just probably never going to happen for any breed.
Yeah, we're a little different in our community because a lot of people do get into the American Bully with the intention of being a breeder and doing things like that, where it's because we're still a young breed. So that's appealing to a new breed. But as this breed progresses, you'll see in the years to come, more dogs will just be pets. You'll just be buying people that just buying an American Bully because that's the pet that they want.
Right. And that, as a breeder, that should be the vast majority of your clients, really.
Well, that's the nature of the breed anyway. It was meant to be, a companion breed. So that's good pet homes are great homes.
Somebody wanted to know if ABKC will do any show come up in Los Angeles. I think they definitely do California shows.
Well, they do San Diego. We don't have a host in LA right now. We have Northern California. We just did a show. John just did one recently. There's a couple shows in San Diego. I believe we were working, possibly Sean Mullins and Cooper were thinking about doing an LA show at some point in time. So it's more on a host, a host that wants to, we don't host our own shows other than Nationals. So it's kind of host based,
Yeah.
We don't pick and choose where they have them. So
somebody said, Grow Logic said they should assign a junior judge to designate class designations for each show. But they actually do that because show 1 is the senior judge, right? And he's the one that will move dogs around if they don't actually fit the class.
Correct. The first judge of the day is the one that should put the dogs into the proper classes. And really that should just fall down. We really should be basing that now on pockets and XLs,
Yeah.
If the dog is a pocket or standard, or is it a standard or an XL, so, but that should be the first judge of the day.
Yeah, exactly. That's where we got bumped. First show of the day. That's where we learned that rule. I was like, what the? And they was like, that's his job. His job is to evaluate all the dogs as they come in the ring. And I've seen it plenty of times where, a judge will look at a dog, see him kind of, go over and get the wicket and wicket the dog real quick. Now we only moved. Okay. Yeah. He said, now we only move based on height, as Cooper said.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause that initial move that you did for moving kind of the older style dog to the classic class, that's over. No more moving of dogs. It's all based on height now. Too short, too tall. That
Correct.
gets you moved, and that's it.
Yeah.
Let's see here. So I'll make sure we didn't miss anything important, but we're doing pretty good. I think we had got a lot of good info out there. I know a lot of people are still packing up, coming to the show. I'm looking forward to it for sure.
In all honesty, I mean, there was a little buzz going around yesterday, or I guess it was yesterday, the day before, of some people backing out, some people. And then when we started to talk to people, some people actually have dogs that have some issues that don't want to go, and that's good. They shouldn't go.
Yeah, exactly.
But it was just like an initial rush. A few booths canceled. I think 6 to 8 booths, where we're canceling, and then it stopped. And then nobody's canceled since then. Right. So I'm pretty sure now, I mean, it's going to be, this was a sold out event. I mean, truly completely sold out. All 225 booths were completely sold out. And then we had to add crate spaces. Then we added 10. Then we added 10 more. So in the end, we had 225 booths and 20 crate spaces. It was the biggest, I think, year ever for the interest of nationals. And no matter what, if some people back out on this one, it's still going to be a big event. No matter how you look at it. I mean, we've got people there already. I've got people from Russia that are there already, Colombia there already, Guatemala there already. I've been talking to people from Uruguay that's there already. So there's people that are already in Texas waiting for it to happen. So, and a lot of people are like, we need to cancel. You know what? First of all, you can't cancel. I mean, it's too late. Second of all, it's a precautionary thing that, we should be taking these precautions anyway. I went and looked at AKC because in America, I tend to think that they've been around forever and they run a great organization with great shows. And, we looked into what they were saying and what they were doing. And then when I looked into that, their nationals still go on. Everything is still going on. They're basically, putting out the same information, that we are. Just, be diligent with keeping your environment clean and your dogs, and everything sanitized. And, it is pretty standard. So we didn't see any real reason to do anything other either. So it looks like it's going to be packed. It's still, the few people that it seemed for a moment like all people are backing out. But then when you really looked at it, we're talking, within 6 to 8 booths, 20, 30 people on an event that turns 2,000 people. So
it's moved out.
Yeah. And then hopefully those people, reconsider it because, I know if you got puppies at home, then what you need to do is before you go back to your puppies, make sure everything you have is sterilized, everything,
And that's honestly, you should be doing regardless.
Yeah.
There's nothing going on right now. If you've brought your dog to a public place and you bring it back home, the last thing you should do is just chuck it back in with all the rest of your dogs.
Never ever do that. Yeah.
You got to isolate the dog for a couple days, make sure everything, like they're not developing any symptoms of anything before you can incorporate. That's just the life of a show dog.
Yes.
Which typically what we're going to do is we're going to leave all the dogs in the kennel, but the dogs that we're showing will be in the house and we'll be monitoring them for a few days and everything looks cool. And boom, you can go back out to the kennel.
Yeah.
So not a huge
But
deal.
again, I mean, I just want to make it clear that we're not holding that against anybody. I mean, people need to do what they feel they're comfortable with.
Absolutely.
And I mean, viruses are out there. They're always out there, and they're always going to be at events where there's a lot of dogs. So it's one of those things that you know, do what makes you feel safe and what makes you feel comfortable. And if you do go, make sure that you sterilize everything you can before you go home. Like should be at all shows, you know. So
yeah,
but yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
And if you have sick dogs, by all means, do not come.
Yes.
You know, do not. If you already have something, whatever it is, doesn't matter what virus it is. If you have anything from coccidia to giardia to, you know, kennel cough to any of these things, do not come to these events.
Or in heat.
In heat. And heat is one. Yeah. There's
no
need for a dog in heat at a dog show.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, all the boys would appreciate it. All right. Well, I think
one more thing too. I want to tell people, groom your dogs. This is one thing that our community, like when I show dogs, you know, man, I would never step in the ring unless my dog was shining. I mean, when I tell you shining, my nails were filed, my whiskers were cut, even my ears, I would trim little fuzzy parts around the ears, every element of my dog. I came to compete. So when I came to compete, I groomed my dog every single time. Like I said, nails filed, you know, ears trimmed, all the whiskers trimmed on the dog, coat immaculate, shiny, clean, you know, glowing. And that's how your dog should be when you go into a dog show. They needed to come ready to compete, not like they just stepped out of the kennel or out of your backyard or anything like that, man. When you bring your dog, that's what you're representing in the ring. Make sure that it's at its best, you know, and that includes grooming and everything else.
Yeah. So FW asked, are you going to do another Back to Bullies show again in Virginia?
Tell him if he's the main investor, we'll do it.
There you go, FW.
Yeah, one day we will bring it back. The thing with Back to the Bullies is it's expensive, and it doesn't, you know, it's like it's a hometown kind of show. You know, it's a different kind of a vibe. And I don't like people to have to pay. I don't like sponsors, and I don't like all that. I like when people come, you know, everything's there for you, you know, have a good time, you know. So we do it, but I don't like to do it too often. I like to break it up because I think it's more of exciting, like when it's every 5 to 6 years or something like that, you know. So, But yeah, we'll do it again. Yeah.
I don't even remember. I don't think I've ever been to that.
There's only been 2.
Has there only been 2?
Yeah.
That would be. I guess somebody tagged me in that and said, "Answer FW." Other people wanted to know if it was going to happen too.
Yeah,
that's cool. Yeah, that was so. That's probably more of a laid back kind of show.
Yeah, it's Back to the Bullies.
Yeah, FW said it's time.
And to FW, I'm getting a little old. It's hard. It's hard to. Nationals is already. I'm damn near dead from Nationals, and we haven't even had Nationals yet. So let me get through that and recoup before I can think of Back to the Bullies.
FW said he got 5 on it. I think it's probably going to take more than that.
Yeah, I believe, and I'm not sure what 5 FW is bringing out. Tell me it's 5,000.
5,000 maybe would help. Yeah,
a little bit. But yeah, we'll bring it back. Yeah, for sure. But let's talk about that way after Nationals. Right now, it's all about Nationals.
All about Nationals.
All about Nationals. Tell FW you want to do something, come Nationals and pick up the mic because we definitely could use some help in the ring this year, calling dogs and making announcements. We need somebody at the beginning this year to do the opening ceremony. So come out there, Nationals, pick up the mic and we'll talk.
There you go. 2020. Cooper. I know Cooper's waiting for it too. He's like, yeah, let's do it. He's ready for Back to Bullies 2024, celebrating 20 years of the ABKC.
And we'll do it at the Bully Supplies office if he's that gung-ho about it.
That's right.
Man, he's got a pool and everything. We'll do it right there in his backyard.
All the awards will be T-shirts.
There you go.
Yeah, best of breed T-shirt. I guess this question ain't important. Well, I don't know what question was it. Let me scroll back and see.
Yeah, I can't see that. For some reason, on my screen, you don't see any of the questions.
He said, if there is dogs showing any types of symptoms, will they be removed? Obviously, yeah.
Yeah.
You're gone.
Not playing with that, and I'm sorry. If that happens and somebody takes offense for us removing your dog, I'm letting you know in advance. If your dog is showing symptoms, we're going to remove your dog for the safety of everybody there. You should already have not brought your dog there. So please realize if that happens, it's because it's for the safety of everybody. But we're hoping and asking everybody, if we're seeing those symptoms at the show, then you've already seen them. So you shouldn't have been there to begin with.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, I've seen dogs at shows before, especially, females in heat. They know they're not supposed to bring those,
No.
and it's obvious that the female is in heat and they still bring them. So unfortunately, that does happen. And it's just a matter of someone catching it and then getting them out of the building, get them out of the way. And the biggest thing, and it wouldn't hurt my feelings if this got implemented at every show, which lots of shows do say this now, is like, there shouldn't be a dog in a building unless it's participating in the show somehow. And even those dogs should be A, in the ring, or B, in their kennels. They shouldn't be walking around the building hanging out.
And that is the rule of Nationals. That's why that venue makes that the rule for that venue is that dogs have to be in booths. So when people always question a booth, that's part of the venue's rules and how we do it. And once your dogs are there, you can only have so many in a booth, and you register your dog to the booth. So we know if the dog's participating, and so Nationals is only for ABKC registered dogs, number one. Number two, it's meant for the dogs in the ring, and that's the real purpose of the dogs being there. We do have other things, like if your dog is coming to go on the stack stage or, that part of it, and it's an ABKC registered dog, then we have that there as well. But yeah, dogs need to stay in their booths and in their kennels until they're going to one of the events that are going on, and that is for the safety of the dogs and everybody else.
Right. And Paige says that's going to be super hard for everyone because everyone wants to stack up.
And go to the stage.
Yeah, that's why Tone is doing the stack off.
Go to the stage, and if you don't want to be part of that and you want to do that as your own thing, then when that's before that happens or after that part is over, the stage is still there. It's still there for that purpose. You don't need to do it outside of your booth. Our dogs are too big to put them up on the tables. So if you want to do that, you just go over there and that stage is there. And be mindful of other people and not walking up on other dogs and keeping your distance,
And King Charles wanted to know if it will be moved in 24. And I think we've answered that already. No, probably not.
No, it's Houston is our home for Nationals.
That's right. Okay. See if you got anything else, throw it in there real quick. I'm not going to keep him on here all night. He's got to pack things up and get ready to go. But if anybody's got anything they want to throw in there, absolutely toss it in there. But I absolutely do appreciate you coming on, especially just to clarify, what was going on as far as precautionary measures. I think a lot of people should feel better now knowing that, ABKC is going to be going over the top to make sure that everyone's comfortable and safe. And, that obviously you're coming there at your own risk, but, ABKC is going to do everything they can to prevent any kind of situation from arising as far as the sickness is concerned. Let me see. We'll have to do that one for another show, brother. All right. You got anything else for us there, Dave?
No, I just, again, just thank everybody for the support of ABKC. Hope to see everybody at Nationals, but don't hold it against anybody if they feel uncomfortable with what's going on. And everybody that attends, looking forward to it. Again, let's all do our part to try to keep this a clean, safe environment to the best of our abilities. Wish everybody the best of luck at Nationals. Everybody's a winner for walking in that door that day because that's the big stage. So again, much love to everybody, and thanks again for all the support. Thank you for having me on and for doing what you do in the bully community. So, appreciate that.
Not a problem. All right, guys. Well, that's it for tonight. We're going to let Dave get back to it. He's got to get ready for Nationals, so we don't want to keep him on super late. But appreciate everyone tuning in. If you would, just give this video a like or a share. If you're on YouTube, give us a subscribe and click that little bell so you can get a notification when we're going live next. And, of course, the show will be available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all that very shortly. So until then, we'll see you guys next time.
All right. Good night.